Greetings wherever you're watching us from, and welcome to Between the Lines, a special show that discusses issues in our country, Africa, and in the world. Today, I am happy to have the guest, Ben Kihanya, a political analyst, social developer, a commentator, and above all, a social activist in our country. Welcome, Sana Bwana Kihanya.
Thank you very much.
We are happy that you're here and you found time to be with us here at Nakuru TV. So, first things first.
Okay.
Do you think the country is doing enough to deal with COVID-19?
Just like any developing country, enough is relative. We are trying our best, but sometimes the best is not enough.
Okay.
But just like every other country that is affected by COVID, every country now is looking inward to see what they can be able to themselves do without actually help from outside or a lot of help from other countries.
Okay.
And it has been a very good revelation time in that we've been able to see the gaps that exist within our health sector. We've been able to see the gaps that exist with in our manufacturing sector. Are we able to manufacture medical equipment for our populace? So it has been a very, very good time, and we are not doing badly. I could say we are not doing very, very badly. We've been able to make our own PPEs. We've been able to make our own face masks, things that we're importing from outside.
Yes.
Though attempt even to make ventilators, which means we are not doing bad. The human resource of this country we can say, has withstood the shock of COVID-19.
Impressive. A week ago, the president, when people were expecting the president will open up the country and the lockdown counties, he made a special reference to the economy of the nation. He mentioned that the government is doing enough to pump enough money to cushion the economy of our country. What are your thoughts about that?
Usually after a lockdown or in war, this is a war.
Okay.
It's better when you look at it from a point of view like a war that has devastated the entire world. And Kenya is not an exemption. We are part of the world.
Yes.
So to now talk about the economy, you must talk about a package, a stimulus package, because at the moment, very few people have money in their pocket.
Yes.
So the only other person with money is the government. And the only way to jumpstart the economy, to make the economy now work, is to release the money to the populace so that we can be able to tax the populace. Remember, no government exists without a taxation regime on its citizenry. So if the government have money and the citizens don't have money, that money is not, it's not part of the economy. But once the citizen get the money, they can be able now you can now be able to talk about now building the economy. So the president was attempting to do is to stimulate the economy, to give sectors of the economy where now money will start now flowing into, like manufacturing, to go into trade, it will go, now it's like kind of releasing the money back to the populace.
Okay. We will be coming to look at that shortly. The COVID-19 pandemic has brought a new reality, what we are calling the new normal, where we are asked to put on masks when we are moving out. We are asked to maintain social distance between the people that we interact with, and above all, to help and keep our hands clean through sanitizing and proper washing of hands. Right at the beginning, when the pandemic had hit our country, we saw a collected effort by even the populace in the fight through the small requirements of cleaning hands and also putting on the mask. Fast forward, maybe 3 months later, the government has been pushed, if I may use those words, to ask members of the police service to effectively ensure that the members of the populace are putting on these masks. Do you think that push is necessary? One. Then number two, do you think that we as the Kenyans have to melegeza kamba in the fight against the pandemic?
Usually when a pandemic like COVID happens, people are scared at first.
Yes.
But as days go by, they relax. They get used to some of these things. Why enforcement? Is because it's against the law. There's a law in the Public Health Act that requires that you don't, transmit disease knowingly or willingly. So that's what the police are actually now doing, ensuring that you put on masks, ensuring that you do those things. But really, if we were to be disciplined enough, there will be no need for police enforcement. Because any time you hear the term force, whether it is enforcement, whether it is force, there are casualties. Yes. Because now you are being forced, you are being made to do. So at that particular time is when you hear cases of bribery, you hear cases of brutality, you hear all manner of complaint, because force is used. And you see, force is when you deviate from the rule of law, and force must be used. It must be used, commiserate with the crime. If you resist, certain things will happen. If you do, certain things will happen. So it's just to call upon the populace to take charge, to be responsible. In countries where there were no, a lot of enforcement, where the populace took, you can give an example like Taiwan. Taiwan is just next to China. They were able to deal with COVID-19 effectively within a month, and life went back to normal. So wherever the populace take charge, wherever everybody can take charge, then we can be able to effectively
allow me
fight.
to take you back on something you've mentioned about the use of force.
Yeah.
A week or 2 weeks ago, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, the minister, the cabinet secretary in charge of Interior, went on his Twitter page and actually said that he does take responsibility, where some of these members of the police service have effectively, they have overly used force in several instances. There have been cases that you've seen on social media and even on the mainstream media of where the police have blatantly beat or injured members of the public in the name of effecting the controls effected in dealing with COVID. What do you think of it?
I am a person who believes in the rule of law.
Yes.
Meaning, the police have their rights and the citizenry have their rights.
Yes.
So the work of the police is to maintain law and order. And if you are to read about security, there are 9 principles set up by the first person who started police forces in the entire world. He was a prime minister in England a while ago, a century ago. And he begins by saying the use of force. The moment the police now resort to the use of force, they lose the support of the populace. And in so doing, because they never be enough, they lose a fight.
Yes.
The work of the police should be that their presence should be reassuring rather than scaring.
Yes.
The moment the police behave in a manner that scares the public, they lose the public trust.
Yes.
So at any given time, it is easy when we saw at the beginning, there were 2 cases. One was at Mombasa, the other one was in Baringo. The Baringo police commander was trying to get the buy-in from the public. And the public seemed to be following what he was saying, because he appeared human to them.
Yes.
The use of force should be the last resort. But that having been said, also we expect the citizenry not to behave in a manner that would encourage the police to use force. Because again, they have a right to use force commiserate with the opposite force coming from the citizenry. They must use force that is of a higher nature. They must, at all time, let's say, every state has the right of maintaining something called the monopoly of violence. So if a police were to tap your shoulder and say you're under arrest and you don't resist and you march to the police station, you're under arrest, no handcuffs, nothing. If you resist, they will try to put on the handcuffs. If you resist more, they are free even to start now using, that brute force. So we would also want the citizenry to know there is nowhere a police officer will take you rather than a police station, take your statement, you still have your day in court. So there's not that scare tactics of the colonial times where, anything could happen to you in a cell has been taken care of. So it should not be you obey the rules because you are scared of the police. Yeah.
Okay.
It should be respect of the law.
Respect of the law. Yeah. Okay. So again, we've witnessed a surge in gender-based violence.
Yeah.
And it has been recorded that there's actually an increase since the pandemic hit our country and restrictions were put on movement and people were pushed on being asked to actually stay at home. We noticed a surge in gender-based violence cases. What do you think we should do to address that?
Well, there ought to be a lot of sensitization about the new normal, as we are putting it, because like men are not used to staying at home for long period of time. The use of space, our houses are not as spacious as we would want to be. So why do people even fear going to the police stations or to the police cells? It's because of space. It's a phenomenon called catastrophe. What do you call that? The fear of small enclosed spaces. So with the men and women in an enclosed space, there's there's a lot of likelihood for friction. So number one, they should have been, sensitization exercises. Now that you're going to stay at home, these are some of the things to expect. Also, when men are under stress, they behave in a given way. So, can we say in a violent way? So, all these ought to have been, as part of package to handle COVID-19, they ought to have come along with that, so that you also know that it's not going to be normal. You are not going to be waking up at 8, leaving the house, coming at 9.
Allow me to cut you short. But do you think violence is the correct remedy for people that have... Okay, yes.
Violence begets more violence. Violence solves nothing. Violence stands for, nothing. It's the worst form. It's men at their most base. So if you can avoid violence, all the other things are okay. But we are talking about now, the new normal is about the use of space, the use of minimal resources, the use of, you are used to providing. You are used to life in a given way. Now you are being forced, like now my friends within the Matatu sector, they are used to waking up at 5 o'clock and coming back home at 10 o'clock. Now the whole day they're outside, they're out there. Now you are being forced to stay in a very small area and to relate to now people you relate to for only short period of time. So you are saying there ought to have been sensitization exercises as to how we are going to stay within these times of COVID. But that having been said, it is good for men to know that sometimes you are not going to be able to be providing the way you want to. Sometimes you are going to use smaller spaces than you are used to. And sometimes you are going to take other laws, because gender simply means accepting laws that are ascribed to a society. So we should be flexible to know that certain things can happen that will make us not, to be that, those manly things that force us to behave in a brute way.
Thank you. Now, allow me to take you back on the issue about the economy. The government said that it's going to, in the attempt to cushion Kenyans against the pandemic, the government promised to increase the the amount of money that is given to the old people, the weak in our society. However, there have been instances, not one, not two, of regions that have actually reported that they are not receiving the Inua Jamii cushion or the money that is meant to help them. Most notably, actually, in Njoro and some places here in Nakuru. What do you think about that?
Yeah, we have a gap when it comes to statistics because we have resources enough to be able to do certain things like those. But now, again, COVID has brought about statistical evidence of working, because by statistics we mean where you can be able to say A is more affected than B. So in a situation where everybody feels, in normal circumstances, 60% of the Kenyan population is hungry, is underemployed or unemployed. So those people are usually, even in the best of time, they live life at the edge. So to say, in economic terms, they live off the fat of the land. So in case of a situation like COVID, where the people they depend on also becomes dependent, the situation becomes even worse. So we don't have statistical evidence of trying to say Ben is more vulnerable than, let's say, Jackson. And that has been the major problem in all these packages. That coupled with just the sheer amount of the population now that is depending on dole from government makes it like there should be elaborate ways of establishing who to go for. For instance, there have been even a pilot about the youth who should do kazi kwa vijana or something like that. The criteria used now to select those youth, you come to discover most of them comes from well-to-do families, and yet probably a package like that one was intended to the youth who would now bear the burden of actually taking something home. So where we have a gap, and a big one, and I hope from now onward the government will take that as a challenge, is maintaining data that can be useful in terms of crises like the one that we have. There's a very big gap between that. Now, however, having said that, some of these old people in those places that I mentioned, the people who are directly responsible for that are their assistant chiefs, area chiefs, because they forward the name all the way up within GAO, national government coordination, the coordination arm of government in these services. If their names were not put properly or forwarded to Nairobi, because this money is coming through M-Pesa or through certain electronic forms, now it becomes a little bit difficult. And right now that you've mentioned, probably we are going to take it up as activists to see what can happen. We've said Njoro, Gilgil, and parts of Nakuru. So it is good to ask why is it that it is rich in all other areas except Njoro, Gilgil, and other areas. So it will be good now to ask, because sometimes we assume government knows, but we are the people who gives government information. But like this is very critical information, because number one, COVID affects the old people more. If they catch COVID, the mortality rate becomes a bit high, and that's why the government is taking that all those precautionary measures to ensure that they stay at home, to ensure they are well fed, they are well catered for.
So ladies and gentlemen who are joining us, it's a special edition of Between the Lines. Our guest today, Ben Kihanya, a political analyst in Nakuru, a social commentator and a social developer, is here to help us digress and discuss the issues of the new normal that has been necessitated by COVID-19. So send in your comments, send in your questions, and we will fill them as the show continues. So now, Mr. Ben, the curfew. Initially, the curfew was at 7. Then the government decided to move it to 10 p.m. The difference between 7 p.m. and 10 p.m., do you think it has
9 p.m.
enough? Sorry, it's 9 p.m. actually. Sorry, to 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Do you think it has enough capability or capacity to help the ordinary mwananchi?
First of all, in other countries it was total lockdown.
Yes.
India tried that, other countries tried that. Why we were unable to do lockdown, which would have gone a long way to actually deal with COVID-19 faster, are the issues we covered previously.
Yes.
About the issues of who would need what at that particular time. We didn't probably have enough masks. We didn't have the infrastructure that was necessary to do that. In fact, I was working for a tracing platform called Murika, and we kind of tried to trace the first people who were returning from other countries to trace their whereabouts, so that they were required to undergo quarantine and all that.
Yes.
So it was not something the government was actually prepared. They were caught unawares.
Yes.
But that having been said, now the issue of the curfew was to prevent people passing the virus under the cover of the night, because a lot of activities at the night, people would kind of huddle together when it is cold. People will stay in safer places, any place that they consider unsecure, they will huddle together where it will be considered a bit safe. And in so doing, there was actual fear that the virus would spread a little bit faster. Fast forward, what we are trying to do now is to try to open the economy, to try to return the country back to normal as fast as possible, without, because there is usually that danger of the second surge of COVID. Yes. So to maintain the curve, to ensure that we don't now put ourselves in danger after having sacrificed all that time to try to contain the pandemic.
Yes.
So that's why probably next time is going to move from 9 to, let's say, 11 or midnight. So like that, until finally we'll say now we are ready to open. And we want to say this is the first time since 1963, since we became independent, where we've been hit by a pandemic. So there are also a lot of learning that are going on, because we've never experienced a pandemic of this magnitude that affects the entire country. Usually it's about floods, about fires, something that are done very, very quickly. So it's also a learning experience for future governments.
Okay. It's important that you've mentioned floods, because actually my next question was about disaster management.
Yep.
Is this country doing enough to deal with disaster management?
Yep.
Case and point being,
back
in around, was it around April?
Yeah.
When we were witnessing floods, and in some places several people were actually killed.
Yep.
And it got to a point that people were asking that we are losing so many people to floods as compared to COVID-19.
The first thing is, of course, it is easy to compare that way. Yes. Without knowing, floods are not infectious. So floods will come, sweep a few people, but if we had read COVID-19 the way other countries took it rightly, you have the examples of Spain, France, Italy, all those. If we would have treated the disease as Taikagwe says normally, it would have treated us abnormally. But floods will come and floods will go. Yes. But that having been said, even losing one person's life is a very big loss to us as a country. Sure. Remember, the country undergoes several exercises that are, that happens. Yes. Like we started by a census. Why a census? Because there's a census question that asks, in the past 7 days, what have you been doing? Yes. Because now the government resource, we are the resource of the government. Yes. By way of, human resource, by way of paying taxes, by way of just being there. We are very important being. So losing even one is not, it should not be tolerated. So that having been said, we actually lack a lot in disaster management in this country, and COVID-19 and those disasters should teach us that we should keep, some money for disaster management.
Yes.
We should train enough human resource in doing that. Just a kawaida thing happening in Kenya, an accident happens. How many Kenyans are trained in even basic first aid? You just realize there are very few. In fact, they cause more harm to the people injured than offering a form of first aid. So we should even now start teaching disaster management in schools, in churches, so that like when you are told a river, this river, there's a very big likelihood it will break its bank.
Yes.
What do Kenyans do? They say, no, we've been here for eons. They don't know that we are experiencing like climate change, and if you wanted to know, like Nakuru is already flooding, is covering some parts of Barut. It has never happened. It has never ever happened. But maybe thousands of years ago, that was where the lake was.
Yes.
So disaster management should be a lesson for every Kenyan to take part in, because the moment you are not prepared to deal with disaster, the level, the scale, like I said, more people dying out of floods than out of COVID. Those are things that can happen. So there is actual need of actually disseminating information about disaster management in all our social places, churches, mosques, schools. Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm getting you right, because actually where I was coming from, even let's put aside COVID-19,
Yeah.
we often have instances where at a certain phase of the year, we have individuals that are complaining or crying out to the government because of floods.
Yeah.
Then we move on to the next phase where we are having people crying again to the government for drought and other things.
Yeah, this country, through a paper that was done by the former President Moi Kibaki and the late Tom Mboya, did a sessional paper of 1966 called sessional paper number 10, in which they were asking themselves, now that we are independent, how do we develop the country? And they developed something we call the railway economy, where the railway is in areas where we can be able to produce, let's invest there.
Yes.
It was supposed to work for a while, but politics being the way it is, it was never revisited. Right now is when, after the population has increased in areas that were productive, is when we are thinking of other areas.
Yes.
So in some of the areas, there have been total government neglect until the year 2010. And now we have devolution and county governments now being given money. And to know that that is the position, the other counties, the marginalized counties, were given a moratorium of 25 years, during which they get 5% of the government funding, the total government revenue, to be able to develop, to catch up with other areas. So we have areas totally where no development had happened, like for 40 years.
Yes.
So infrastructure-wise, all those things, they have been total neglect. Now we are trying to catch up.
Yes.
So that having been said, there is actually actual need of making sure that those places develop. Economically speaking, would give like tax holidays so that investors can actually now rush to those areas.
Yes.
Because wherever there is no capital, actually development now becomes, slow pace.
Yes.
Wherever there is capital, then the development almost happens naturally.
Yes.
Because we'll get something from there. If you look at the map of Kenya, you're going to realize like 3/4 of us live, within a very small area, and leaving the entire, the rest of the country entirely. When writing the new constitution, we thought that the chapter on land would have provisions of land use. I find a lot of Kenyans more concerned about land ownership.
Yes.
Among those people who believes that doesn't matter really who owns the land. Yes. What we should be more concerned about is how we use the entire land. Yes. Because the chapter on land begins that all land belongs to the people of Kenya.
Yes.
So that we don't find somebody in Northeastern trying to grow maize when it grows naturally, probably somewhere in the North Rift.
Okay.
We don't find somebody in the North Rift trying to keep, animals for meat that can actually do better in Northeastern.
Yes.
In Northeastern, yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So those examples are like every inch of Kenya
Yes.
should be put to economic use to enable those people now who want to be herders, others who want to grow crop,
Yes.
others who want to do manufacturing,
Yes.
to be able to move to those areas.
Yes.
The moment we only develop one small area,
Yes.
those disasters are just natural phenomena
Yes.
of an area that you've neglected.
Okay.
Yeah, it is called the broken window syndrome.
Okay.
Wherever one window is broken by an abandoned house,
Yes.
the boys will attack all the other window panes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, you have mentioned something that actually has been a point of discussion in the past few days. There has been a surge, especially in some provinces, counties, not provinces, that were initially the bread baskets of our country, or the income baskets of our country.
Yes.
We had several counties that initially used to grow enough tea and enough coffee.
Yes.
Right now, we have those large tracts of land being replaced by residential buildings and residential houses. Is this a catastrophe ready to happen?
That is a catastrophe waiting to happen. As a matter of fact, if you go to developed countries, that's why we have cities. People stay in city, but they go farm in farms. You cannot have farms being turned into cities, because where are you going to grow the food? You are going to end up having a concrete jungle.
Yes.
They are just stones, all those things. Like Nakuru used to be food secure.
Yes.
Nowadays we are almost, tethering
Yes.
to join other, basket cases,
Yes.
where you beg for food.
Yes.
Yet we have enough land,
Yes.
we have enough water.
Yes.
The moment you build, houses in area where you should be growing food, and then the population now keeps on coming to the city,
Yes.
somehow you will start now importing food, and that's what has been happening.
Yes.
So my take again about land use
Yes.
is we should not demarcate agricultural land to less than 2 acres of land, because that is the land that you can be able to feed your family and also to feed us who stay in cities. So the moment again you demarcate 50 by 100, 80 by 40, and you are doing that in areas where you should be growing food,
Yes.
of course, it doesn't need nuclear science to say what will happen. You are going to be experiencing hunger and all that. So I think those are some of the things the Constitution intended to address, but because of the clash between, owners of large tracts of lands
Yes.
and those without,
Yes.
found a clash,
Yes.
where some communities believe for you to be labeled successful,
Yes.
you must have at least a piece of land under your name.
Yes.
So all those things, they should be paradigm shift. Let me ask you, of all companies we have in Kenya, the biggest that generate a very big chunk of revenue is Safaricom.
Yes.
But the money Safaricom generate per year is the same the whole of Uganda generate per year.
Okay.
So you can compare.
Yeah.
So yet, how many acres of land does Safaricom actually have? We are going to get it is negligible. Is it have an acre or something?
Yes.
It's negligible. So this idea that if you don't have land, you cannot do anything, is something that is killing agricultural areas, where everybody now want to buy a 50 by 100 so that they can tell friends the way they have a lot of 50 by 100. So there should be a law that says in all agricultural areas, first of all, demarcate this an agricultural area. In all agricultural areas, it cannot be demarcated below 2 acres, because that is the acreage that you can be able to be productive in a piece of land.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we are about to take a small breather. Keep sending in your questions. I can see them. We will fill them at the end of the show. It is 42 minutes past 1 o'clock between the lines with our guest today, Mr. Ben Kihanya, political analyst, political commentator, and a social developer in Nakuru County. We will be back after the break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to this afternoon discussion that we're having on the socio-economic political impacts of COVID-19 in Kenya. And today we are privileged to have our guest, Ben Kihanya, a political analyst, political commentator, and a social developer, above all, a human rights defender in County 032. Ben, before we took the break, you were briefing us something about what should be done in relation to protecting the food baskets in our country. There's a common saying that says that Africa grows what she doesn't eat, but she eats what she doesn't grow.
True.
So tell us more about the measures that should be taken to try and protect ourselves in regards to food security.
Before we enacted the Constitution of Kenya 2010, we began by developing a land policy in Kenya. In that land policy, we had talked about land use, how we are going to use the land in Kenya. Because land has always been a very emotive topic in Kenya, especially among the have and the have-nots. So if everybody was to benefit from land, then we have to put land to good use and also protect the people without land from those with a lot of it. Land for speculation purposes only is not land that is put to good use. And as you've so aptly captured, that we grow food that we don't need, and then we require food that we don't grow.
True.
So we are losing both sides. You are losing that you are growing food for others, and you have to sell them at cheaper prices. Like, for instance, even the way we go about selling our products. Coffee, a kg of coffee, Kenyan coffee, cost 30,000 at the coffee exchange. Yet the farmer, we end up getting, peanuts, probably hundreds, but it's been sold at 30,000. So why is that? Why is it that we cannot be, and it is sold under the Swiss label, Switzerland, and they don't have a tree, even a single tree of coffee. So you lose out this way, and you also lose out the other way around. So we should have land to grow our coffee, and then we should have enough manufacturers to be able to manufacture our coffee, so that you complete the whole chain, plus even marketing. We lack nothing at this particular time at our independence. So why would we continue doing what we were doing 50 years ago when we didn't have enough human resource to do what we are doing now? Then when we don't get a lot of profit from our land, instead of now addressing the fundamental question of land use, what do? We start from fragmenting our lands into small unusable pieces. We start building now concrete jungle. At the end of the day, we become a food basket with nothing to export and no food to grow. So that's what I was talking about, land use. And I was saying, unless a policy is enacted by government where big land owners, a tax is imposed on any piece of land that they don't use, they don't put to use, either to grow cash crop or food crop, they are just going to sit on that land for speculative reasons. And again, if we allow everybody to split land to small pieces, we are going to end up, everybody have land, but that land is not sustainable. There's nothing that land does apart from offering a roof on their head. Yeah.
You've mentioned something about our back during independence, and I've remembered at independence we were at par with several Asian tigers. Fast forward years later, we cannot see them anywhere in regards to our economy, partly because of the issue of corruption. Before the pandemic hit us, we had witnessed a series of arrests made, especially to who we'd call the big fishes that had been implicated in different corrupt scandals. Allow me to ask you, Mr. Ben, do you think the government is doing enough to fight corruption?
We could say there are attempts to fight corruption, just attempts. But seriously, what did Singapore do? Because Singapore, they returned the president who was there, the prime minister who was there, in almost the same period. Uhuru Ruto, the first term was coming. What did he do? He immediately jailed 8 ministers who had been implicated in corruption.
Yes.
In Kenya, even jailing a single minister. In fact, our jails are for the poor. We don't have anybody of substance in our jail. Just just look at any name. In fact, it is viewed that at a certain point, you now above the law, so to say. So, of all the presidents, we could give it that Uhuru Kenyatta has tried, has shown, some element of trying by maybe arresting the big people. But you are yet to convict even one to be an example to the rest. So the moment that gap between I can steal and get away with it, or if I steal, one day the law will catch up with me, that does not offer enough incentive to anti-corruption activities that happen in the country. So you find like countries, those tigers, the Asian tigers, all of them had something in common. You steal from the public, we kill you. You steal from the public, we jail you for life. So the incentive to steal is removed completely. But in Kenya, what do? You steal, we make you a governor. You steal, we make you an MP. So the moment that happens, and even who do we vote? There's nothing, I usually tell Kenyans, there's nothing that happens when you are voting. You are not baptizing that person. You are just simply giving him more leeway to corrupt activities, because now you are taking him to where the money actually is. So until the voters put in themselves that we want clean people, we want people who will stand for the rule of law, we want people who will not go out and steal the little that we have, we continue having this scourge with us.
So the burden or the big weight
lies
is
with the people,
on the people,
the voters,
the people of Kenya, the voters of Kenya, who will now decide that.
What was happening? People are saying, huyu ni mwizi wetu, tunataka mwizi wetu. And in a lot of areas, in Nakuru, it was happening. In Kirinyaga, it was happening. In Kiambu, it was happening. People literally shouting that we know that these are not very clean individuals, but they are ours, as if they steal on behalf of communities. It should be like, it should pain every Kenyan that somebody is stealing what your mother has worked for maybe 40, 50 years. At one time a politician said, hii pesa ni ya mama yako. Yes, it is my mother's money. My mother has been around for about 65 years. Meaning, out of those 65 years, maybe if you were to remove like 18 years, all the rest she's toiled for this country. So take it, anybody who is stealing public money is actually stealing your mother's money. It should pain you that much. If you don't care about your money, cares about your mother's money. So anybody who steals from the public is stealing our money. The money that should go to address the issue of floods, the money that should go to address the issue of unemployment, the money that should go towards, ensuring food security, all that is being taken by an individual. And because they are stealing from us, most of the time they don't even keep it here. They actually now take it outside the country. So the country even becomes poorer instead of becoming richer. So for Kenya has only two fundamental problems: corruption and negative ethnicity. If we are able to address those two issues, the rest of the things will fall into place. Remember we said about our human resource that is among the best in the world. Because in Africa, we are just ranked behind South Africa when it comes to human resource. Yeah.
Impressive. So the key issue, the key matter that should go out to the public and to the viewers who are watching us is that we, the voters, or we as the Kenyan people, hold the right or the power to have a corrupt-free country.
It is us. It begins with us. Number one, if you are corrupt, you are more likely to vote for a corrupt person. Because, birds of a feather flocks together. Number two, if you knowingly and willingly vote for a corrupt person, you are also corrupt. Because how else would we put that? how else would we put that, you know, so and so is corrupt? He was maybe employed somewhere, and the only reason why they fired him is because he stole. And then you say, represent me. Parliament should be a place of men and women of integrity, without which then you are putting thieves to be in charge of resources. And you know what they say. There's no honor among thieves. So they are going to steal from you. The other thing is about jail them, deal with them. If you steal from the public, you should serve. You should serve in jail. We should not reward you. We should not think that at one time you are going to reach certain levels where you are not going to steal from us. So those are things that Kenyans ought to know. If we were to develop like the Asian tigers, number one, deal with corruption. Number two, encourage buy Kenya, be Kenya, buy Kenya, build Kenya. Because anytime you wear a Mtumba shirt or a Mtumba trouser, what are you doing? You've just exported some jobs to China or to elsewhere. Every time you don't want to buy anything Kenyan, when you go to a supermarket, you buy eggs from South Africa. What have you done? You just exported a job to South Africa. Every time you don't, look at, the supermarket shelves keenly to employ your fellow citizen, what you are doing is you are making your fellow citizen unemployed. So some of those things are as a result of, you must do them cautiously and deliberately, so that you reach certain points where you say, I employ so many people per day. But when you employ a Chinese, you employ a Taiwanese, you employ, a South African, you employ a British, and then at the end of the day, you ask yourselves, where have jobs gone to? You've just employed all the foreigners that you can think of, and you've just rendered all the Kenyans that you know of jobless. So some of those small things are the things that made the Asian tigers to develop and made African countries not to.
So be Kenya, buy Kenya, build Kenya. Impressive. Allow me to sample a few questions from our viewers. Paul Kagi asks, you have talked of Lake Nakuru flooding. Yeah. If you were to advise the government, what would be the way forward?
The way forward is an economic assessment that should be carried out, so that if it is a permanent phenomena, then it becomes part of the lake, a compensation package for those people who had invested there, something like that. Okay. Because if it's a permanent phenomena, then there's no other way of going about it. Again, if it is temporary, it is high time we start knowing there's something called climate change. Yes. And if the lake is going there, at one time it will actually go there. So the more we continue building there, the more we continue investing there, we are risking our citizenry. We are actually postponing a very big problem. So compensation package for those people who are there, and then you increase the Nakuru National Park to those areas. Okay. Yeah, they are doing it, but they are not coming up with. They are not telling the residents there. They are not coming out with the finding. They are not telling us what is happening. Yeah, is it a new phenomenon? Is it something permanent? Is it something to do with the geothermal activities at Menengai crater? We have all the questions, but very little answer about what is happening in the Nakuru, the lake.
Okay, another question that has just come in from Judy Wanjiru. She says that as much as I want to be Kenya, build Kenya, and make Kenya, Kenyan clothes are often very expensive, while the mitumba are affordable.
Yeah, those are some of the fundamental questions. Why are they expensive? They're expensive because, number one, we don't have enough cotton, probably importing cotton from other places, yet we have soil that was growing cotton a few years ago, especially in the Nyanza basin. Sample these. And I have a lot of people who sell Mtumba. They are my friends, and I know they are very hard working Kenyans, and they should be in the fashion or clothes industry. How many jobs are created by mitumba? The person who buys it, imports it, and then the person who will sell it. Those are only 3 jobs. Sample, if we were to have a close industry, there will be the farmer, there will be somebody who is selling the seed, there will be somebody who is plowing the land, there will be they go to the factory, they go to a very big warehouse of some sort.
Yes.
There will be all manner of jobs. So if you have 3 jobs, if we have a choice of creating 10 jobs and you end up only creating 3 over years, what happens is you kill a complete industry, and that's what has happened. Initially it was those people who cannot afford the clothes from Kenya, we could import for them, as a package for a small while. That's what it was all about. What has happened? A few years down the line, no industry. Then youth are leaving, education institutions at a rate of more than 500,000 every year, seeking for jobs. If we continue killing jobs, what will happen is, at one time, yes, you are going to refuse to buy that cloth because it's a bit expensive, but your sons and daughters, if cumulatively you buy for them those clothes from Tumba, it end up the same, because you are going to be buying 30-year-old, you cook for them, you give them food, you actually buy them clothes because there are no jobs, you house them because there are no jobs, they bring children because there is no job. So what is better? You are better off be Kenyan, buy Kenyan, build Kenyan.
Amazing. As we continue to sample, there are some comments that are coming in. Karuri wa Waidhanji says, wow, big up my MP. Jesse Kiarie says, big up Mutongoria, endelea na kazi.
Thank you very much.
I'll keep sending the comments and the questions. We will continue fielding them as we move on. So COVID-19 led to the closure of almost all schools in our republic.
Yes.
Soon after, the Education Cabinet Secretary asked that a policy be involved where digital learning be used for the Kenyans, or for the Kenyan children out there, for them to keep up with the education.
Yeah.
Now, is it working?
At the moment, it's not 100% effective. But those kids from areas where they can access the internet are learning, or there's a semblance of learning. And at one time during this COVID-19, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta came up and said there were balloons for doing the internet. At that particular time, the country was very angry because they were expecting, like, we're only talking about lockdown and food and stuff.
Yes.
But moving forward, digital learning is the way to go, because in digital learning, we could have homeschools. Kids, instead of competing with other kids, they compete with themselves, because if it's a lesson that you want to cover, you cover it at your own pace. It also broadens your horizon, whereby the world become a global village to you. It opens markets, because in future, all these boundaries that we have are going just to exist probably just exist imaginary. Because now today, if you wanted to purchase something from eBay, you can purchase anything that you want to do. If you wanted to sell, you could sell. The kids that we are bringing up today must be digitalized. We must give them digital experience, digital learning. Gone are the days where the TV belongs to the father, and the phone only belongs to the father. What happens? If you go home, your kids are going to take your phone, and they are going to search every other places you don't even know. So we are raising a generation that can be able to do that. The worst thing we can do is to stop that. So what needs to happen so that every kid access that? Those balloons, they are very, very necessary. I don't know the costing or anything else. I'm here to look at it critically, but they are very useful. Because what should happen actually? There should be conscious and deliberate attempt to open Kenya, the entire country. Every inch of Kenya should be put to good use. tell me anything else that can do that apart from the internet. So that every kid who is a nomad in Turkana can access the same education as a kid in Lavington. At that particular time, you'll be talking about equality. In that, the only thing to access is, a computer. So that this kid, even when he's herding the sheep or the goats, they are still learning the same way as, a kid from elsewhere. But in a situation whereby one kid is running in an academy where all the facilities are there, another one is running under a tree, so that when it rains, the school closes. When the sun is very hot, the school closes. And then at the end of 8 years, you give them an exam, a national exam that assumes that all of them were learning under the same condition. We end up losing a lot of human resource by declaring a 14-year-old a failure. At 14, that kid is still a kid. So at that particular time, if they are connected to some internet, they are going to get some interest. Some of them are going to be artists. Some of them are going to be interested in all manner of fields, because the computer is now everything.
We will, viewers, our guest today will be a constant figure in our discussions on how our country should be run, because he is a social developer, he's a community developer, a political analyst, and very enough, not very, but enough grounded on these issues. I can see my producer telling me that our time is almost up, but I need to take you through these questions. Number one, you are the chairperson of the Matatu Association here in Nakuru.
Yeah, the town service.
Town service. At the beginning of the pandemic, the county government of Nakuru moved the different Matatu terminus from town, and they were moved to a different place. Your thoughts on that?
Okay. Nakuru is soon becoming a city, and there are all the good things and bad things associated with that. So the good things, we need space. We need to attract investors to Nakuru. As a matter of fact, maybe I should mention at this juncture that USID is pumping enough resources in Nakuru for the next, like 5 years. It's a 5 years program. Yeah, labeled County and Uendelevu. So it is going to be tackling issues of health, agriculture, and water, basically. But those are not the only thing they will be tackling. There will be a lot of other issues associated with making Nakuru a sustainable city. And how have they done it differently this time round? Initially, what they do, they have, let's say, $100. In that $100, they contract a company. This company is the one that comes to Kenya and gives or manage the fund. This time round, what they have done is that they have removed the company. They are coming with that $100 and saying, form something called a local development organization. We are in the process of doing that. We are almost at the tail end of developing that. In fact, at this particular juncture, we are doing something called social mobilization, so that we bring all the stakeholders. Nakuru TV is going to play a very important role in terms of, saying, hosting those people, giving information, disseminating what will be happening. And it's a huge program involving the county government of Nakuru, civil societies, private sector. So it is something that requires even that space that is being created in Nakuru, and it is good. The only problem is where we take those matatus. Are they habitable places? Do we have the infrastructure? And again, you must understand the economic ecosystem of certain sectors. If you take matatus to, let's say, Afla, and you take the market, at Afla, and then you take the matatus at Ziwani, and then you take the hawkers probably somewhere else. It's just like thinking you can have a cow, the head is in a separate place, the other is somewhere else where you think you'll be milking, and the meat is somewhere else. You must understand the ecosystems of certain economic activities.
Yes.
So put them in one place.
Yes.
Ensure that that place is well built.
Yes.
Like at Ziwani, we have enough land for
Yes.
all town service.
Yes.
The only thing that it lacks is a market. Because who are our customers? The customers are the people running the markets.
Yes.
So before you declare those places are good, sit with stakeholders. Let them give you their thoughts. Tell them what you are doing. The only problem is when you don't involve stakeholders, you are not talking to them, they end up thinking probably what you are doing is not for their benefit, but for your own benefit. The moment a lot of people invest in Nakuru, what happens? You are going to need to carry a lot of people. So to the Matatu people, that should be the message, that if you keep Nakuru well, if a lot of investors are here, the likelihood that you are going to have a bigger number of people to be faring to work and from work is very high. And that is what the message that should go out there. In the absence, when it comes to only enforcement, don't come here, don't do this, don't do that, people will rebel. And that would be a sad thing to do.
As we wind up, I would not allow you to leave without asking the burning issue that is in everybody's mind. I know you are, as a political, a politician by himself.
Yeah.
Are we seeing the end of Jubilee?
Okay. The end of Jubilee Party. Jubilee, if you were to trace at the people who are in Jubilee, you are going to start find them from 1992 when they were in Foda City.
Yes.
You are going to find them in 1997 when they moved to DP.
Yes.
You are going to find them again when they became NAC members in 2002. You are going to find them in 2007 when they moved to PNU. You are going to find them in 2012, 2013 when they went to TNA.
Yes.
You are going to find them in 2013 now again when they moved to Jubilee. So we can call them political nomads.
Okay.
And when people are nomads,
Yes.
there's likelihood that in every 10 years, they metamorphoses into something else.
Yes.
So every 10 years,
Yes.
the people, the major component of Jubilee
Yes.
have been in movement
Yes.
from Foda City,
Yes.
DP and all that,
Yes.
to now Jubilee.
Yes.
Now, what have they been doing again? Every 10 years, they have new partners. At first, they had the real partners, and then they move to encouraging partners. They move to, or they have been moving and partnering with a lot of people. So, at this particular time, probably there is a full stop, and they are thinking of who do we merge with next.
Yes.
And the likelihood of a Kikuyu-Luo alliance is again in the offing from the look of things. So whether they are going to form the government, that is subject to conjecture. Whether they are going to withstand, now everybody is saying the hours and then they left, the hours and then they left. All that, all those are the questions that we are going to see.
Okay.
But we are calling on all citizens to know that politics is about numbers.
Okay.
These are our friends. And somebody being in the position of being in government, if you just close the loopholes where those in government can access, all those corrupt deals,
Yes.
you are going to find others will even drive better
Okay.
in the opposition than in government. So the likelihood that we've lost, others have won.
Yes.
First of all, the new constitution guarantees you as a Kenyan
Yes.
services
Yes.
regardless of your political affiliation. So it's not a fight, what do you call it? Gladiators, war. A gladiators war end up one dying. It's not about that.
Okay.
This is a situation whereby more people would prefer somebody for the next 5 years or 10 years, and then they move aside, others come in. And it should be like that. It should be competition of ideas.
Okay.
Who is coming with the best policies for you?
The people.
Yeah.
Just a yes or no answer. Was the Senate right in saving embattled Governor Anwaiguru? A yes or a no?
Did they save? Because there's no
said,
salvation.
Okay, it appears that just two lines only.
Okay. The Senate operate in two ways. They have a select committee for certain special laws that they should pray, because the Senate is the only body that can impeach. All the other bodies can only recommend for impeachment. That's why we kept the Senate, so that if you wanted to impeach the president, it should be through the Senate. If you wanted to impeach a governor, it should be through the Senate. So they had two ways. One of the ways is forming a committee. The other way is going plenary. And whichever way, what should actually concern us as Kenyans? Will we see justice being done? Will justice be done? Because there are two people. They are the people of Kirinyaga, represented by their MCAs, and there is the governor. So will we have justice for Governor Anwe Guru and the people of Kirinyaga by the evidence adduced? So it should be about evidence. In any case, it's not about political affiliation, it's not about gender, it's not about any other things. It's about the amount of evidence that can be adduced. So that that is what should concern us. But the politics about we have numbers, it will never cease to be there, because again, the Senate is a political organ.
Amazing. It has been an amazing hour with you, Mr. Ben Kihanya.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for finding time to come to Nakuru TV and
very
engage us with these different discussions. We will be looking for you soon, because some of these issues we only passed them by, and I believe we will find time to have you again. Just a few comments. We have Andrew Muturi, an environmentalist, who says, good interview. I've enjoyed the show. He looks forward to joining us on a discussion of environment. We sure we will do that. Balozi Daniel Ngetich says that, Ben, what you're calling an attempt by the government in fighting corruption could be a publicity stunt to fool Kenyans, because no big fish has been jailed so far. This country is full of cartels. Then Caleb Koches Abwajo says that, hi, good interview. Ni vizuri all sectors to be considered when coming up with ideas for our nation. I've been your host, Karanja Jackson. Thank you. Keep sending your comments, keep sending your discussions and your requests. It has been a good hour with our good friend, our commentator, political commentator, social developer, political analyst, Ben Kihanya. Thank you for finding time. I've been your host, Karanja Jackson. Until next time, stay safe. Thank you.